Hi, welcome to Smartboard 101. My name is Robert Rocha, and I'm an instructional technology specialist with the El Paso Independent School District. In our recent segments, we had talked about adding interactivity into our Smart Notebook lessons. And we had 10 ways we're going to show you through all these video series. And so our next series, we're going to talk about the next property or next way was going to be called change color to reveal. So I look at my board here, I have this one slide called change color to reveal. Now the finer point of how to use this particular tool is we're going to be utilizing the Properties tab in detail and using that Properties tab to change the properties of our slide so we can go ahead and reveal answers to our students in a more magical or mysterious way. And so I think we're going to grab a lot of attention and a lot of interest with student use that way. They'll be able to identify and to come up to the board and be able to see what their answers are. So let's go and take a look and see how this order of change color to reveal works. So I'm going to click on my slide. And there you go. And here I've got looks like a pretty simple slide as you can see. Right, and now I have a picture of an animal cell. And of course I have these different arrows that are pointing away from the cell or are pointing away from different objects that are actually within that cell. And so as I'm looking at it, you can say, well, how does this work in my classroom? Well, how can I go ahead and add this to what makes this interactive? Well, what you would do in previous times in your class, you probably had the student raise your hand and you would point and click and say, well, oh, that's the cell membrane, or that's the mitochondria, that's the nucleus. And so the kids aren't really making that total connection. So now with the smartboard, what they can go and do is they come up to the board and physically write on it and say, okay, well, I know that this particular slide or this particular arrow is clicking on or pointing to the outer part of that cell, so that must be the cell membrane. So the student would grab a pen and they would write cell membrane. They put their pen down. And of course, you'd have other students come up and they would finish up writing all their answers there. And you might say, okay, well, I got the answers down. Let's go now and check to see if that's correct. So you have instant checking. And so a very simple way you can do this is to check the answers. You grab your finger or take your finger, whichever you want to go and do, and you hold it on that blue or that green area for a few seconds. And when you do that, you're going to get a menu screen that opens up and it says set background. So I'm going to go ahead and click on set background, and voila, what does that go and do? Just like I mentioned before, it's going to open up that Properties tab menu. And so with that Properties tab, as you can see in here, of our cursor, it's kind of that, it's green. And so if I just change it to another color, let's say I'm going to change this to gray, and now I can see all the different answers that were hidden in the background. And so now I can go and check my answers. Yes, the cell membrane, that was a cell membrane. I can go ahead and put a check mark there if I wanted to and say, yes, I got that correct. And so that's one way you can go ahead and check your answers for using change color to reveal. And if you notice, all that simply is I labeled all my different pieces of my slide using the same color as my background. So that way it hid itself or kind of blacked it out, if you will. And so now when you change that background color, it reveals the actual color of reveals the answer. And so let's go now and let's build that slide. And I want to take a moment here to mention to you that yes, when we're working with Smart Notebook, I know we tend to want to use the board to create our projects, our lessons, but in actuality, you don't really need the smartboard to do that. All you really need is your computer that you have. And so right now I'm going to switch back to my computer screen and I'm going to show you how to build that lesson without using the actual smartboard. So here we go. So if I go back up to my smartboard here, or my actual Smart Notebook, my computer, I want to go ahead and add a new page to my planner. So if I go back to my toolbar, in the upper right-hand corner, I have the little thing called Add a Page. It's a piece of paper icon with the green plus sign. And again, also, there's always redundancy. So I can also go down to the bottom left, and in that same tabs area, I can also add another page. I'm going to go ahead and add it from here. Okay. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do first is I'm going to keep the slide here. So I'm going to add my picture first. So in order to find the picture, I need to go to the gallery. So the gallery, if I go back to my tabs side, I have my gallery tab, which is the second tab from here. and it opens it up, and I have a search menu. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a search. I'm going to type in the word animal cell, and let's see what it finds for us. So I'm going to click on my first magnifying glass, which is the search feature there. Searching, and it found 10 pictures. And lo and behold, there is our animal cell that's right here. I can double click or I can drag this out into my work environment, and now I go and have my slide. Now what's really neat is, you may say, well, that's kind of small. How can I get that bigger? Well, if you notice here, and when my editor's up, I have a white handle and I have a green handle. Well, you notice my arrows change when I put it over the green. The green allows me to rotate that picture. But I don't want to rotate it right now. I want to go ahead and actually make it larger. So the white handle, if I hold on it, notice the arrows becomes a double arrow there. And now I can go ahead and actually enlarge it to any size that I want. Okay. So now it's there in my picture. But as I mentioned to you earlier, students are going to be coming up and are wanting to touch that object, and we don't want that object to move. And so I want to be able to lock that item in place so it doesn't move at all. So I'm going to go back and do what's called the Marquee Select. So simply what that means is I'm going to drag my cursor from left to right or right to left over the object. And when I do that, notice now I get my editor that comes up. And so to lock it, notice in the upper right-hand corner, I've got a drop-down arrow. That drop-down arrow goes to what I want to call locking. And it should open up another little window there in just a few moments, and it says lock in place. So once I select that, notice when I double click on it now, I get the editor comes up a little bit, but now I have a lock. And so if I try to move that item, I can't. No matter what I do, I can't move it. If I wanted to go back and change that again, I'd simply do the Marquee Select. Let me try that again. And sometimes things work, sometimes they don't, but I double clicked on it, and I got my lock on it. I just simply double click on the lock or single click and go to unlock, and now I can go back to my previous state of that. But I'm going to go ahead and keep it locked. Locking and lock in place. Okay. Now the next thing I want to go and do is add my different words I want to add to it, the identifying words. And so all I would simply start to do is click on here and type in cell membrane. And notice now, though, the color is black. And I don't want my slide to be black. I want it to be that green color. So once I type in my name here, I'm going to take my cursor, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. And in my toolbar that I have for this particular text box, if I click on that little black box that's there, I can simply choose that dark green color. And now my color is now dark green. So I'm going to go ahead and move that into place. Okay. Now, to save time, I'm going to go ahead and take the actual letters or words from the other page. And so this is kind of a little unique learning tool we can learn about Smartboard. I'm going to go ahead and put this into what's called a double slide. So I'm going to show 2 slides at one time. Okay. So now, when I click on the double one icon up in the toolbar, I now have my previous slide up there. What I can go and do now is here, notice I clicked on that word and an editor box came up. All I can do now is simply drag that one object to the next side. And there it is. And so you may say, well, what's the benefit of that? Well, why is that important for me to do that? Well, what you can do now is in your classroom, knowing that you have that dual page up, you can have your questions on one side of your answers and actually move it to the other side, or a word problem that you want the students to pick from, and they can move objects from side to side. And that way, it saves you some time. And again, it's adding another way of adding an activity to get the students out of their desk and moving things around and making that concrete connection. So I go and have that here. I'm going back to my slide now. I have the information that I want. And I'm not going to use the different arrows that they have. I'm going to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to go back to my single page. So I'm going to simply go back up now to my menu, my toolbar, and notice now that that one icon changes to one paper. So I'm going to click on that piece, and now I'm back to where I was. I'm I'm going to go ahead and move it around just a little bit here. Okay. And at this particular point, I'm pretty happy with the way my slide is looking. What I want to do now is, again, I want to lock everything in place. So instead of me clicking on each individual item to lock everything, to save time, I'm going to go ahead and take my cursor, slide it across the whole piece, and notice once I did that, all the different menu boxes came up. Now, it doesn't really matter which menu box I'm using. If I go to the drop-down menu of this one here and I go to locking, I can lock that in place. And so now each one is locked in place and they can't move. So we're almost done with our slide. And so here what I want to go ahead and do now is go ahead and add my line. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my line arrow. I'm going to click on this one. And I'm going to draw my line from the cell membrane to here. And as you can see, it's pretty simple. And now I have straight lines going to the actual objects. And so my last thing I want to go and do is I have to go back to being a cursor, go to my Properties tab now, make sure I'm clicked on the background, click on the Properties tab and choose that dark green, and now there's my slide. And so I'm able to now to go back to my board, hold my finger down, set background, and change my color. Okay. But sometimes those finer points we kind of forget. So there's other ways to change that background color. So if you forget to hold down your finger to the board, I can always go to Format in my toolbar. Under Format, I have the background feature, and what does it do? It opens up the Properties tab background. So if all else fails and I don't remember those two pieces, I have one additional area, and that's called the Properties tab. I simply click on the Properties tab, and I get that same menu screen. So there's different ways of doing it. Whatever you feel comfortable to use in your classroom is what you're going to go ahead and use. So this pretty much wraps up the change color to reveal. I hope that you like that particular interactivity method for your classroom and that you'll want to be using it. If you have any more questions or anything, please let me know. And hope you join me for my next segment. Thank you.